Hey, welcome back to the podcast. I am Justin Stacy.
I'm Nate Thomas.
I'm Josh Matney.
And welcome to week 2 in our Halloween part of our holiday extravaganza. We are tackling the movies It and It Chapter 2. And Josh, I feel like we're just going through Josh's list for Halloween.
It's pretty, yeah. This
seems
seems like it would be. This is my list already.
We've been on a run with you, Matney. We did Child's Play back in the last season.
Yeah, we ended with Child's Play. We started with Halloween. That was, continuing on with It. Like, this might be I might like this podcast now.
That's all it took.
Didn't like it before.
All it took was to give you what you wanted. We got you.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, this was an interesting watch. I'd watched the first one in 2017, 2018 timeframe when it first came out.
Mm-hmm.
I remember really enjoying it. And then I attempted to watch the second one, a year or so later when it came out. And I was like, I can't stomach 3 hours. So I watched about an hour of it and quit. So the first time I quit. This time I suffered through it. Basically, for the purposes of this podcast, I suffered through it, and it was okay. I don't have any real specific critiques outside of it's just too darn long.
Yeah, I want to talk about that when we get into it.
Yeah. So that was my reaction, and I said, you know what? I'm going to be a completist. I'm going to actually go back and watch the Tim Curry version after I watch the first two.
We're going to talk about that too, I hope.
Well, we can, but I didn't make it through that. After 4 hours or 4 or 5 hours, I guess, of the reboot version, I couldn't do anymore yet. I just couldn't. so I think I have a decent memory of it though. It was one of my favorite, I guess, horror scary films of my childhood. So
yeah, it's one of my favorites, even though it trails off at the end.
Yeah.
Again, we can talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, Tim Curry is iconic, really, in anything he's ever done.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Well, sit back, relax, put your feet up as we open a bottle of pop culture.
We're gonna talk about some really cool stuff. With Josh, Nate, and I, we're gonna blow this thing up. We're gonna talk about the movies you love. And if you don't, well, that's just tough. But we're gonna talk about shows that are awesome. You'll say, whoa! When we talking about Blossom. This will be your one and only stop for everything nerdy in a bottle of pop culture.
All right, well, let's get into this. Let's show what we brought to the table here. I know, Josh, you got some toys. Nate, you got some toys and some art, and I've got a sweatshirt.
That is terrifying.
It is. It's got the same face on the back. It is one of these like black market 3D printed sweatshirts that you can get it from China.
Yeah.
It's one of those.
Wow. I don't have any t-shirts or anything. Anyway, go ahead, Josh.
I got the Pennywise Funko Pops. I got the one with the spider legs and the one with the balloon.
Bring it to the camera. Bring it to the camera. Let's see it.
Okay, so here's the spider legs, if you can see it.
Okay.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yep. That's creepy.
And the one that says I Heart Derry balloon. It's kind of, here we go.
There you go.
That light is pretty terrible.
Yeah.
I like the one that's just Pennywise, no teeth, just standing with the balloon. I think that's the spookier one. I don't have it, but I think it's...
My next one is going to be the Tim Curry Pennywise.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Welcome Back Collectibles has that one. I'm just saying.
There you
I've
go.
seen it.
There you go.
So I have an actual Stephen King Funko.
Nice.
I don't keep them in boxes because apparently I don't care about making money. But I like that it has the balloon. I thought it was cool, and something that I'm personally excited about. When I was a young man, many moons ago, I read Stephen King books, middle school, high school, mostly high school, and I loved it. I loved The Stand, all that stuff. And my grandmother, my dad's mother, she was a painter, and she would do landscapes and whatnot. And I have several of her paintings in my house. I was at her place one time and she was asking me something I'd like, and I was talking about what I was reading. So I gave her this calendar that I had of the Stephen King movies on it, and she took a calendar page and painted me this. I'm going to put it a little closer.
That is really cool.
Wow,
I mean,
That's really good.
It's from. I mean, she just drew it. She didn't trace it.
She nailed it.
Yeah, and
It looks like a photo.
It's the Tim Curry one, of course, which at that time that's what we had.
Yeah.
But I've had people in the past be like, "Why don't you sell that to me?" I'm like, "I can't. It was painted for me."
Yeah.
Admittedly, my mother hated it when I lived at their house, and she did not like it hung in her home. When I got married, my now ex-wife, hated it and did not want to see it. At one point, it hung in my office at a community action agency in Tazewell that will remain nameless, and people would be like, "Can you please take that down?"
Wow.
Yeah, they did not.
Literally no one liked this thing except you.
Well,
and maybe
it's
your
not that
grandma.
they didn't appreciate the art, but they just think it was spooky.
Right.
And it is. But guess what? So is
that's the
it.
point.
Yeah.
Anyway, I like
the
to show
point.
that off,
You know, when 2017 came out, I was so excited because I know they've been in talks about wanting to redo this for a long time. And the script went through many different, like some elements I think stayed, but there was a lot of big differences. And the thing that I was like worried about was, could they top Tim Curry? Like I
Right.
like the original, but like I love 2017 a lot more because they had less censorship to worry about. They had the okay for the hard R. They could so that was something I was really
There's
happy
also a
about.
difference between a TV miniseries in 1990 on broadcast television and a theatrical release in 2017 that is rated R.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're the same story, but they are not the same.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind because like I forgot what was it? ABC got the rights to do the mini series, but yet they were so pressed against some of the stuff that was in it.
Right.
It's like, why would you buy the rights to it and then complain about like all the stuff and then censor the crap out of it? It's like it made no sense. But they were able to still pull it off, except for, of course, the ending was kind of terrible. But
you gotta think though, and I know I can say this because I'm ancient. Back in those days, we still had the TV events, the mini series. To go back, you had Roots, you had all the John Jakes novels, you had all the annual stuff, and the Stephen King movies were on ABC. It wasn't just that; it was The Stand.
Yeah.
It was the Langoliers. It was Storm of the Century. It was the Tommyknockers. They did a remake of The Shining at one point for television. I mean, the mini series, now they're called limited series. Like Netflix will come up with a 10 episode limited series. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
But it's not on Netflix. That was just the world we lived in. We didn't have streaming. You didn't record unless you had a VCR. Even in 1990, people didn't record like we think of them recording.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think both has their merits, and I really do like the Tim Curry version, even though I couldn't sit through it again. But I think I agree with Josh in that I like this reboot movie better, and I think it is just because it's rated R. I think a lot of the points we made about Halloween not needing a lot of blood, not needing a lot of the slasher-y type stuff. I think with it actually benefited it. You got this, and it wasn't over the top. You didn't see a whole heck of a lot of it, but there was more than just the PG-13 version that you got in 1990.
There's shock value in a movie and seeing a monster kill children.
Yeah,
that is not what we're supposed to see.
Yeah, and they had the guts to do that. Like, that was the biggest thing for a lot of the ABC version was the kids are going to be in danger, but how much danger can they put it on television? In this, like the opening sequence is a kid getting his arm bit right off, and they go all out with it. Like,
and he's crawling with one arm. That's an amazing scene.
And that
amazing
automatically lets you know, like, this is not here to mess around. We're going to but I will say, like, as someone who has read a book, there's a lot more violent stuff in the book, but I get it. Like, how much more long can you make this movie?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I always go back when we, and we're not complaining. Good gracious,
Yeah,
we're,
yeah,
we're
I
not
love
about
this
that.
movie by all
When
means.
people are like, well, the book was so much better. I don't like that argument because
Yeah.
books and cinema or TV or whatever are different mediums.
Hmm.
Just like when you listen to a book on audio, that's also different from reading it.
Mhm.
And
And I get
King's
so
writing
sick of
is-
people. Oh, Stephen
Yeah.
King has the most dense writing. What I mean is, he'll take a minor character, and by the time the chapter is over, you love the character,
Yeah.
and then they'll kill him off. You know what I mean? But I get so aggravated when people say, "What was different in the book?" Well, no kidding.
Yeah.
The book, you know somebody's thoughts. In the
Yep.
book, you know their motivation. I mean,
Mhm.
that's a terrible. Watch me just pick apart everybody. I'm making everybody mad tonight. You're next.
And the one thing I loved about the 2017 version, which I thought they nailed, was the chemistry with the kids.
Yep.
They
Mhm.
were, I'm sorry, but like Eddie and Richie, the kids, those are probably the best ones because they like the way they banter between each other.
Yep.
And like they're actually kids. They're dropping
Yep.
cuss words, they're getting into trouble, and
Really,
it's
my friends
like,
and I did not talk that way when we were young.
uh-oh.
I don't believe most 13-year-olds talk that way. That is fantastic for the movie. That's really over the top.
I don't know. Maybe it was based in the 80s, so I mean,
Yeah, but there is no way a 13-year-old cusses like that all the time, because somebody would hear him and somebody would correct him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a
Although,
movie.
It is a movie, and I would wonder if just based on the time period it was supposed to be based in the 80s, if kids act really did. Now, I think kids nowadays absolutely does.
Mhm.
100%. I've heard young people under the age of 12 playing Fortnite together, and it's just all cussing all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah,
And I will say,
social
like,
media
if
has
this was
changed everything.
based in the 50s, the way they talk, like, Richie
Yeah.
dropping something, it would definitely would have been really out of style there. But like
Yeah.
it being the 80s, I feel like it felt more at home there than it would have in the 50s.
Yeah, I feel like kids, and this may just be just pop culture of what we know of the 80s, because I was an infant in the 80s. But I feel
turned
like
12
the
in
80s
1990.
were a bit of a rebellious for teenagers, young adult, or teenagers and young adults. It was a bit rebellious. So I think that's just what they're trying to show. Is this
Yeah.
just the rebellious?
And none of these kids have good parental figures.
Right.
None
Right.
of these kids have any good leadership at home.
I think, honestly, you can take out it from Pennywise from the movie, and then what movie
Really
do
good
you
movie.
have? Well, you have a movie about children who have terrible parents, sucky childhoods, and then grow up and have to deal with that. It molded the way who they become, and then they have to go back and deal with the consequences of their childhood. That's more or less the movie without it.
But the movie you're describing is it wins Academy Awards because it's a drama. The movie that we actually watched was great, but didn't win a lot of dramatic awards.
That's true. So I will say that I think the 2017 version, the Skarsgard version of Pennywise,
Right.
is creepier looking.
Yeah.
On purpose.
On purpose, the 1800s clown look.
Huh?
Oh my gosh! Like, I didn't know that you could make a clown more creepy looking than just any other clown, but there you go. Now the Tim Curry version reminds me of Bozo.
Yeah.
It was supposed to.
Right. It was what you were, I guess, what you knew in the 90s and the 80s and what you thought of. Well, Bozo was one of the most popular clowns ever. So let's just make him be,
Right.
a monster, right?
Well, and with the original story being in the 50s, of course it's going to look like Bozo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's
I
true.
realize we're mixing mediums, but I
Right.
can see the connection.
Right.
And I like that they give you enough information about the backstory of Pennywise to put him in the 1800s to have a reason to be wearing this.
Right.
The one thing I was really worried about with the second one was how they were going to, because they were going to do a backstory, and if for those who don't know about the book, it has some connection with the Dark Towers. So that's
Well, yeah,
what I love.
all of his books do.
Yeah, So like
And they don't
Pennywise
translate
is
well.
sort of the same entity as Matron, the turtle, and all this stuff. And like, I'm kind of glad they didn't go there because I felt that would have been way too much to deal with and try to like cram into like the last third act. So, but yeah, like
That would
the
work. on
backstory of
screen.
him just landing on Earth and being there for like what, like millions of years or something.
However long, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a good way to deal with it. Then try to throw in all that other stuff.
Well,
I
even
would-
in go ahead,
Go ahead.
Justin. My apologies.
No, you go. You go ahead.
Even in the book, and I realize that we're talking book, miniseries, theatrical release, comic book, TV show. We're talking all of it. Even in the book, when it gets to the end with the turtle and I've read it. It's really a hard read.
Yeah,
Because it's metaphysical and it's all in their minds and it's the macroverse and the microverse, and just saying that makes me want to say I'm done with this.
yeah,
It would not work on screen. And Bill Skarsgard or Skarsgard?
Skarsgard.
Anyway, amazing,
Skarsgard.
amazing.
Yeah,
Andy Muschietti, the director, gets full credit from me because he went in with the right mentality. I'm going to make this unsettling.
Yeah.
Like, it's not outright scary. It's not a jump scares, but it's not like, I don't think it's a scary movie. It's unsettling.
yeah.
If
Well,
that's fair.
Andy Muschietti, you can tell he was a fan, and I think
Right.
for somebody who was a fan to make this, it wouldn't have worked. But since he was a fan of the book, and he even talked about how like, him and his sister would read it, and like there was a couple things they did take some creative liberties for, but like I think it was enough to kind of still make it work. And one of the reason he picked Skarsgård was he's younger and could possibly appeal to kids better than somebody like Tim Curry.
Yep.
So like this idea of trying to be more appealing to a younger crowd,
So here's a question: did Castle Rock on Hulu come out first before this movie or after?
after.
I'm wondering,
Right
was it after? Yeah, because he's in that too, and a very, very good actor.
I read that Hugh Jackman was also considered to play Pennywise,
Oh,
but he
really?
could only play it creepy. Like Skarsgård has some moments as Pennywise where he's just talking. You can see why they'd get close to him. They said when Hugo Weaving would do I think that's the name I gave. Hugo Weaving would do the reading. It was just scary, and they said that wouldn't work because kids would never get close to him.
And another little thing about the Skarsgård thing, the whole eye movement where he can he can actually do that.
Yeah,
Really, he can
Yeah,
make
he's
his
a-
eyes.
he's a mutant.
Wow.
It's the worst mutant power ever, but he does have one.
Yeah, and the voice as well. Being that was probably one of the things I noticed about his clown versus Tim Curry's is that the voices are so different. Tim Curry's is you're the raspy New York, style.
yeah.
Hello, Georgie. And then you've got Skarsgård, who really his voice is more kid-like. Like he talks down to kids and it's very low and hello Georgie. It's very
That
low.
was the same voice.
It was it was the same voice. But I had actually practiced Tim Curry's before the podcast. I had not practiced the other one because I felt like I could do it from memory and obviously couldn't.
I'm fairly certain Justin didn't watch the movies, Josh.
Well, Skarsgård put a more kid tone to his voice, almost like if you want to talk to a kid, I guess you want to try to at least or if you want to draw your victims in, I guess you want to try to.
That's exactly what it is. He would draw them in.
Yeah.
Where Pennywise, and again, it's different times, but the Curry Pennywise, he would talk to them, but he would attack them quickly.
Yeah.
What the scene in chapter 2 where they're under the bleachers and the little girl's talking to him and she goes, I'm going to go. And he starts doing the crying and then he stops.
Yep.
It just stops. And it looks like your screen has frozen. And she says, aren't you going to, and he goes after her. That's another jump scare, but it's also her defenses were down in the movie.
Yeah.
It was well done.
The thing about the jump scares, I really thought about this, and I know a lot of it is jump scares, but I think because they are successful jump scares and not fake outs,
Right.
Like there's none of them's a fake jump scare, which I actually hate.
There's not a
The-
cat jumping down instead,
Yeah,
like in the movie
because
Alien.
by the
Yeah,
time you
movie.
get to the real jump scare, you probably already you're not, the tension's gone,
Mhm.
So it's like for this, it's like, okay, when Pennywise comes after it, it's not like, oh, faked you now,
Right.
so it was successful at the scares, even though I can't understand why like too many of them can be a little much.
Mhm.
But that's just kind of the modern horror jump scares are kind of the thing right now.
Yeah. Now, in defense of Tim Curry's Pennywise, I think that his is more realistic
Mm-hmm.
to where it's more believable. If you thought this clown was either a psychotic killer or an actual monster, that's what I would picture. I wouldn't picture, because in my
It's more
mind,
rel-
it's more relevant. Skarsgard, most of the time you're looking at him, there's something just unrealistic about it. There's
Yeah.
something superhuman or monsteristic about his clown.
And somehow that really works at the same time.
It does work. It works, but when you look at him and his eyes are all over the place and his face is molding and stuff, you're thinking, I know instantly that's not an actual clown. Whereas Tim Curry's, that could be.
Yeah. I've
And
been
I-
to the circus. I don't like clowns,
I don't either.
but I am going to hang this in my office at the church. What can I tell you?
Oh, it's funny though, because one of my favorite kids shows growing up was Bozo. So I clearly, and I think it was it that kind of ruined clowns for me when I watched it. I think that's what ruined it.
One of my favorite parts of the first one, and I think they did it really well, was the picture, the slideshow
Yeah.
sequence. I thought that
Yeah.
was done really well.
It was.
Yeah.
And-
it was well. It was spooky.
Hmm. And the second one, I get like it's very long. It's got a lot. Honestly, for the casual viewer, they probably could have cut out the parts where it went back and showed every kid being like all the interactions again with the
Mhm.
kids.
Yep.
That probably would have been a little better for the casual viewer, but for the fan of the the miniseries, the books, and whatever, I mean, it's pretty much what we wanted. But
It was.
yeah, and I will say, like, the casting for the adults was really good too. Like
It was
Bill
fine.
Hader as Richie,
It was
Um,
fine.
and who was
Any stand-up comedian could have played that role.
right.
Anybody. I
Mhm.
mean, but the reason I say that is this: the adult roles on screen are not fleshed out.
Right.
They are just, they're not. They're not fleshed out. You could have put 7 random actors or 6 actors and 1 actress, whatever the proper term is, and it would have been fine.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And now, like, I'm a fan of Bill Hader. I'm a fan of James McAvoy. I tolerate Jessica Chastain. I mean, they're fine, but the adults matter less than their actions.
Right.
Yeah.
The kids, you get so invested in the younger selves that you have to have the perfect casting. And quite frankly, the miniseries and the 2017 nailed the kids casting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not being critical. The adult casting was fine.
No, yeah.
I'm just like,
because, they
it was
picked
fine.
Seth Green as Richie in the original miniseries, and I
Mhm.
thought that was like a perfect role for him because
He
like
wasn't even
was-
Seth Green then.
Yeah, like
Not like
So-
we know him.
but yeah, like whoa, my chair actually does lean back actually.
Listen, if your feet go up in the air, I'm not gonna be able to stop myself.
Might need to lock this up here, but
Josh is gonna come back with his toolbox and work under the chair. Let me see, fellas.
gonna have a technical issues. Gonna have like the screen where it shows like the technical problems.
Yeah.
Can't you just get some red balloons so you'll float too?
Oh, that
Yeah.
was some.
Yeah, just fill it up with red balloons.
Oh, red balloons. That was also something I feel like the 2017 did better than they the way they used the red balloons. Like
I
it
agree.
actually
Uh-huh.
made the red balloons seem creepy. And
It
not
was-
just not
yeah,
just there.
It was more plot device driven in 2017 versus
Mhm.
it's just they did it really just to give a clown a balloon in the miniseries.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah, the
there was
balloons were
purpose.
just props in the original,
Right.
the first telling.
Yep. That's true.
So can we look at each part individually? I think otherwise we're just going to meander.
Yep.
Not that I'm in charge. Justin is the host, but you know, the structure of the novel is told in flashback for the most part.
Mhm.
And that works. It's great. I really like what they did telling when chapter 1 came out in 2017, just telling the story linear.
Yes.
Just here's the kids, they're coming together, and each of the 7 losers, that's what they call themselves. I'm not labeling people. Let's be proper. They all have their time to develop.
Yes.
And how the group comes together organically, how they become friends, and they still don't always get along. Because, you know, remember having those friends groups, you'd fight with them, but the next week you'd hang out again? I thought it was so well done. And you believe what they're putting in front of you is you feel like they're not acting. You feel like you're actually watching what's happening. Is that fair?
Yeah, because like I like how they treat Mike as like he has to understand like he's going to have to either pull the trigger eventually or be the behind the gun,
be the
or
sheep.
be in front of the gun. And you know, he sees that at the end of the movie. And you know, like there's this big conclusion with like especially Bill, where he goes from like obsessed to find his brother, then eventually realizing he is gone.
Right.
You know, like you do have those moments, and then Beverly, of course, overcoming her dad, and you know, Ben kind of, you know, just you're right. Like the kids have a better arc than the adults, because like with the adults, they just kind of show up and they just got to do something.
Right.
And,
Well, and that's why they divided the movie that way. When the first chapter ended, they didn't announce the second movie until after the first weekend. Because you could have just told that first 2 hours and 25 minutes, I think it is, 2 hours and 15 minutes, and that's a complete story.
Yeah.
The clown's gone. They think he's dead. He laughs at the end of the credits, which is nothing. And if that's all that ever came out, it's a good story.
Yeah.
And coming back 27 years later for chapter 2, I didn't mean to put that on screen when I did that with my hand. You know, that was bonus, and they did well. I'm not being critical, but the first part of the story is, I would argue, 2 or 3 times better.
Yeah.
Agreed. And I went on record before, and I will say this about this movie too. Any movie where the focus is not on the monster, but on the characters, and you're getting the character development. We said it in Jaws. We said it in Halloween. We're saying it here. That makes a good movie, period. Regardless of what class of movie it is, it makes a good movie. And it's just I think it makes a better horror movie, because horror is so, they don't do that a lot. So when you get it, it's so good. You remember these
character driven.
Correct. Yeah. So I love the fact, and really the first movie is the only reason why the second movie was decent.
Yeah.
Right.
Because
that's the second movie is fine.
Yep.
I'll occasionally watch the first one in October. I've seen the second one the first time I saw it and the other day.
Yeah.
Like I have seen the second one multiple times, and like there's just something about, like, you know, if this would have just been a single movie of just like the 2017, I still probably would have been fine with that.
Yeah.
But I think even like the director even says something like the best part is the kids.
Yeah. But it is in the book too.
Yeah, and even in the book, it's the best part, because like the kids' imagination is just rampant.
That's why. That's why it's so good.
And
otherwise, it's just seven childhood friends, 6, getting back together and talking about their trauma, like Justin said.
So, yeah. And, you know, the second one, I will say, has probably a really cool opening scene with like the bridge.
At the exact same way that it came back in the novel. Well, the times are different, but.
And, you know, unfortunately, that is based, minus the clown, but like the whole, like,
it's inspired by a true story.
Yeah, like a gay guy being tossed over the bridge. I think that happened in Maine or something. Stephen King.
I think you're right.
Yeah,
it's based. It's based in. I got it here. Bangor, Maine is the town.
Where Stephen King's from.
Yeah,
it's where he lives to this day, I believe.
And, you know, I'm still, you know, I'm still waiting for the supercut version. That's how big of a how much I'm.
The supercut.
Yeah.
It's 24 hours long.
It's like the Lord of the Rings. If I wasn't here, there's like an extra hour somewhere there. I'm like, okay, I'm in.
I would wager you could take the two movies and cut and splice and make the whole story better by interspersing the adults with flashbacks, much like the novel and the original miniseries.
Yeah,
Maybe so. Here's go ahead.
So they move away. They don't remember. They have to come back. They meet up. The scene at the restaurant, too over the top.
Agreed.
Way too over. And again, I don't want to keep comparing, but there's too much. It went from scary to campy.
Yep.
That's the one thing about the second one. I kind of wish they toned like. I
Too
like
much
that it
special
still
effects.
had humor. Like I think the humor really works with this, because you have like friends bantering between each other. But I think there's times like you probably need to tone it back for it to remain as a horror film. And a good example is the scene where Eddie is in the pharmacy and he runs into the leopard again, and it spews all that vomit on him. And instead of it being like a straight up scary scene, it's just like playing Angel of the Morning.
It's a stupid scene.
It's a stupid
You
scene.
can say it.
I think it was meant to be disgusting, and it was. It was disgusting.
Yeah, well, it wasn't good either.
No.
Also, I think, and I know it's on purpose, all of the children losers as children, all of them you can kind of root for in their own way.
Yeah.
You do not root for the adults. You want Eddie to die because he's such a jerk. You want Richie to die because he's such a jerk. You kind of like Mike, but he lies to all of them. You like Beverly, you like Bill, and you kind of like Ben, but Ben's like a non-entity as an adult.
That's true.
He's just a good-looking guy, and I'm quoting the movie. He's kind of a non-entity. So even the adult characters, you want them to not make it.
Yeah.
Well, that's not fair. You don't care if they make it.
I will say though, the whole grandma scene was pretty funny. Like she's
oh my gosh,
she's just staring at the like.
Yeah, that was one of the scenes that I did like of the movie is that when you were focused on the Bev and she was looking around, and then you were seeing in the background the grandma doing random things. That was the best part.
But they didn't need the special effects monster grandma.
They did not need that. No,
yeah, that was
like,
terrible. I will say that I
Spooky
think the CGI
beats
was
over the top for me every time. Yeah, the CGI is not great.
And I feel like the second movie it didn't have enough Skarsgard Pennywise the clown. It didn't have enough clown. Yeah, he was obviously all these other things.
The book is kind of like that too. Like he takes the form of like whatever
what you fear.
Yeah, and he's a regular guy in the books. A lot of Bob Gray.
Yeah,
he's Bob Gray a lot in the book, and maybe not a lot, but some. And I understand the clown is what draws people to the movie, but Pennywise, and they're only in Derry a couple of days at the end, and again, it's the ending's the weakest part.
Yeah. And I really, I was kind of, I think it's the ending is still somehow better than the 90s. But like the thing is,
how
did the 90s end? I actually don't remember that.
It's still a spider, but like, I think they just attack them and rip out the heart or something like that. And here they kind of like, even though it's dumb that they basically bullied,
they insult it to death.
Yeah. But there was some logic to like he has to obey the physics of that world. So like I kind of got that.
So the way I took this ending is that the only reason why he had power is because the adults, mostly the kids, but the adults in this case, believed that he was this monster.
They decided not to be afraid of him.
They decided not to be afraid. It's similar to the Freddy versus Jason storyline where Freddy basically they got to, when you become an adult you forget
about Freddy,
and when you forget he dies basically. He has no power. It seems like it's that too. It's a similar thing where you have to believe that this thing is powerful to give it power.
Again, Stephen King's an excellent author. but he wrote himself into a corner with it.
Oh yeah.
Because nothing could beat it. And then, you know, it's a being of pure energy, but it has to take physical form to feed. That's what the book says. So to take physical form, then you take the physical weaknesses. It's a tough concept when you're reading it. I mean, I'm not saying people are stupid, but it's a hard concept.
Oh yeah.
It's nearly impossible on screen. 'Cause I don't know if you know this or not. Movie audiences are stupid because we don't pay attention. I mean, people who consume media, we're dumb. We don't pay attention. We're on our phones. We're talking. You know, we don't listen. I feel like I'm talking to teenagers when I say that. So you're like, I hated when they're like, "You're just a scared clown. You're not a scary lady." And I'm like, or whatever they were saying. Absolutely. That's when I decided the movie wasn't any good.
Yeah. I mean, I was expecting the ending to be kind of all, you know, be weak, but I'm like, I still seem to like it a little better, but I'm just like, I was expecting the ending to be weak. Like, there's no way of getting around.
How is the ending in the book?
Very similar to the miniseries.
Yeah, it's very, except there's a lot of like, there's a scene where I think it still has a lot to do with Dark Towers. Like, there's the scene where Ben is basically destroying all these eggs that it has laid, and the theory is it is laying eggs, and it has something to do with the Crimson King, which is a huge evil character.
Yeah, it's not really clear,
like
but that's what you think.
Yeah, so like, but like the 90s is probably the closest to the ending, versus like half clown, half spider walking around, like still kind of talking, you know.
Well, and you gotta realize when they kill it in the book, the whole town floods.
Yeah.
Because it's like the creature, the being, was the only thing keeping the town alive. So the whole town floods and it's destroyed. And, you know, they have to not outrun it, they have to get away from the damages. And it would have been cool on screen, but I don't know how they could have explained it to make any sense.
And honestly, with the not miniseries, good Lord, the series coming out, they could explore that with the town history. Because I mean, the book, and I'm sorry, I don't want to be that guy that says the book is, I'm not saying the book is better, you know, that's,
well,
the book's always
different.
better.
The book,
except for Forrest Gump.
Yeah, the book has so much of the town history of why it is the way it is.
But books can do that.
Yeah. And they have and that's the thing about screen time, like, not everything can translate to a movie screen. And I think that's what has met, like, Stephen King even admitted, like, he realized that when he would like try to write we call them screenwrites or whatever.
Screenplays.
Yeah. And like sometimes he would just be talking way too much. And it's like, okay, no, you need to kind of like have, you know, you can't just be describing all this, you know, it's too much. You gotta have to like make it flow. But yeah, like I do think like the second has a whole lot of flaws, but like the one thing I do like about it a lot is Pennywise is more pissed off in this one, basically. Like he has a grudge that is just not going away. Like,
but you know, it doesn't do a good job explaining why when they come back to town he doesn't just kill them one by one. Yeah, because they're scared.
Yeah, like and then he needs like,
it doesn't do a good job explaining why he can't.
No. And you need Henry Bowers to come back and, you know.
And they didn't do a good job explaining that. At the end of the first movie, Henry Bowers falls down the well. Then you pick back up and his hair wasn't white. Because
this is why we need the supercut, Nate.
You know, his hair turns white in the original because he sees the creature as the spider. He looks into the deadlights and it doesn't kill him. Yeah. Which is why he's then so bound to the creature. That's a small thing. It could have really been good.
Yeah.
Henry Bowers, that character could have been written out of the second part, no problem.
Yeah, that was something like I didn't know. It's like, you know, really you could have just removed him from the movie, and honestly, it probably wouldn't have made a difference.
Not how little they used him.
Yeah, because like really, he just was there just to be killed off pretty quickly.
Well, if you'll remember reading it and in the miniseries, he stabs Mike. Mike's in the hospital. Mike doesn't go with him to fight it the second time. So they already going in 2 men down because Stan's dead. And that to me was just a change that didn't need to be made.
Yeah.
It didn't make a bit of sense to me.
And, you know, Stan's character being kind of, I know he tried to I know Muschietti tried to really justify Stan's suicide, and I get the sentiment. I thought it was like a lot more empathetic than what King wrote, but I don't know. I just feel like him just doing it out of sheer fear to me just made it more scary, because like he's willing to break the bond that he was, he made.
So I take it the whole explanation as to why he did it. He didn't want to bring the group down because he knew he couldn't withstand doing that again.
When his memories started coming back, it scared him.
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't from the book, that part?
No.
Okay.
In the book, and what's funny is in the book, Stan is actually the one who asked to make a pledge to come back and take it down when and then he's the one that kills himself in the
that would have been interesting.
Yeah. But anyway, and also there's like this theory that Stan was also had a bit of The Shining. That's why he kind of like realized
they kind of allude to it, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, he knew that he probably couldn't, but it's like, I don't know. Like I mean, I still think the second one is, to me, still enjoyable, even with its flaws. But like the first one is just such top tier.
So
my bad again.
I'll go first this time. Do you know if the series that's going to come out of Derry, do you know what time frame it's supposed to be? Like, are we going to get like historical Derry, like from 1800s Derry, or are we going to get? Saying. Really, that's what I want.
That's not going to be where the movies are.
Yeah, I want the black spot involved. I want all that. I want the shooting.
I also want Bill Skarsgard to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, that should be good.
So I don't think Bill Skarsgard is against the idea of doing television, because he's done it before. So like
there's big money in television now. He should do it. He's not a movie star.
No, like I feel like he is made Pennywise the modern version the way it is. Like to have somebody else is just like full.
Is it going to be a TV series?
Netflix? No,
HBO.
I believe.
HBO.
Oh, it's HBO. Okay.
Yeah.
So they'll have no problem with language, nudity, or violence.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you ever watched anything on HBO, fellas, but
those are requirements to make a show.
Except for The Newsroom, which only had bad language.
That's true.
One of my favorites.
Great show.
Of course, I like Aaron Sorkin. That's neither here nor there. So can we just agree that if you're going to see something scary, 2 hours is about the limit?
Yeah.
Any longer than that with a scary movie, your adrenaline doesn't hold up.
Mm-hmm.
Am I the only one who feels that way?
No, I
say around 2
agree.
hours. Because the sequel, Chapter 2, is 2 hours and 47 minutes.
I think for the
That's a long
fans,
time.
I think they're okay with the length, but for like somebody who's just wanting to watch like a regular, like a casual viewer, it's way too much.
Yeah, but Chapter 2 is
that was
scary.
me. Like when I was telling Justin before we started, like they could say like, there's a 4 hour, 5 hour version. I'm like, yeah, I want that one still.
There is a 5 hour version. You watch them back to back.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I couldn't resist.
There's apparently like Andy Muschietti wanted to do the police scene later, like, and then have like this really super version cut, like where it has like the guys who murdered
Adrian Mellon.
Yeah, Adrian, and they're pretty much confessing like it was a clown, and the police officers like looking down like they're crazy or whatever.
Yeah, they don't believe him.
Yeah, so like, but I don't think HBO was or Warner Brothers was okay with that. So they're probably like, no, look, we're done for right now.
You guys probably know that the Duffer Brothers wanted to direct it, and they didn't have enough name recognition. So instead, they made this TV show called Stranger Things. And if you watch Stranger Things, it pays homage to Stephen King a lot.
Oh,
It sure does. Yeah.
And I don't know that they could have made it. It is going to be, it's close to not being adaptable.
Mm-hmm.
If you really want to get into the deep mythology of it. It would be a hard thing to adapt.
It really is. And honestly, like the fact that they were even able to do The Stand also was pretty crazy.
I'll go back to the original Stand, the miniseries from 1994, any day.
Yes.
That's one of my favorites.
The new one, if you haven't seen it, don't bother.
I haven't seen it.
It is absolutely garbage. And I mean that from the bottom, like
bottom of my heart.
Yeah. Cause like I was so like the casting is good. But
they changed the story is my understanding.
and they focus.
Why change a great story?
Yeah, they focus way too much on Henry and Hannah. What's Amber Heard's character way too much.
Oh, the
like,
princess.
they're really the
Banana,
main
yes.
focus of everything. And like when a character dies, you're just like, okay, whatever. Like you just don't because if you remember in the original miniseries when what was the deaf guy's Nick when he died, it really was kind of sad
because it's in that explosion.
Yeah, and this one's just like, oh, okay, he's dead. So what's happened next?
I haven't watched it.
Yeah,
I have a good friend who lets me use their Paramount Plus account though, so I may watch it. His name's Justin. Don't tell anybody. It's a different, just not this Justin, if anybody's listening. So do we want to touch on the controversy in it and what never could have been on screen, or we want to stay away from that?
No, I think we should bring it up. That was one of my talking points.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't mean to do away with your talking points, man. I just got to talking.
No, you're good. But yeah, I mean, there's no way that any form of media can touch this scene.
It shouldn't.
And it shouldn't. It amazes me that Stephen King. No, I know why Stephen King put it in the book, because he was addicted to cocaine when he wrote this thing, and that's a true story.
He would never write that.
Yeah,
right. But to have a sex scene of teenagers, 11, 12, 13-year-olds, well, you can't do that.
Six boys having
and one girl
having sex with one girl. I know there's a term for that. I'm not going to look it up because I don't want to see it. But
yeah,
there.
I get that he tried to make it like some sort of, there's a meaning behind it, but like
in the book, it talks about how it brings them together. They can't find their way out of the sewer. Mm-hmm. So by doing that, they're united. Even when you read it in the book, you're like, I feel like I'm doing something wrong by reading it.
And I've read it, and that's even a scene I just kind of skim through or just ignore completely. Like, because like when I had when I read, I'm like, okay, how much more? Like, it's not super detailed, but like it's happening,
which I think makes it a little worse.
Yeah, and it's like, come on, King. I know you was on cocaine and all, but like, was this necessary? Like
that's my least favorite thing I've ever read by him is that section of it.
And there's another sex scene in it. It's not really a sex scene, but it's kind of like involving the bullies. And I'm like,
what's that boy's name? Anyway, one of the boys that gets killed.
Yeah.
And Henry get a little friendly with each other.
Yeah, Patrick Hockstetter or something.
That's the name. I could not remember.
And it just seems like out of nowhere. Like it didn't really make sense why it happened, but I don't know. I guess it was the 50s. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, and I would imagine that maybe riding high, these things pop up in your head, but I would bet that if this book had come out tomorrow, he would potentially be canceled for that.
Oh yeah,
quote unquote canceled.
Well, heck, he won't.
It'd be more controversial now.
Like, way more controversial. Yeah,
and should be.
Although, granted, I think that you can get by with more in book form than you can if you were to,
let's face it, the 50 Shades of Grey series made almost $1 billion in paper format, and it's basically written porn.
Yeah.
I haven't read them. I'm guessing.
I'm sure
somebody can tell me no.
Acting than that.
Okay. So Bill Skarsgård, we're all sold on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the man.
Mm-hmm.
And his whole family is just talented.
Yeah,
like
Alexander Skarsgård was in True Blood and was one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, and
his dad too.
Yeah, if him like, it's funny because like now this new generation of kids who've seen it, they're only going to expect Bill Skarsgård to be the Pennywise clown for any other thing that comes out that's a continuation of the movies. Because for the longest time, like you were thinking, well, who's going to touch Tim Curry? And now
and they did.
I do think Bill went in it with respect with Tim Curry. He didn't try to say, I'm going to imitate Bill Curry. I'm just going to do my own thing.
He made it his own.
Yeah.
And you can still watch the miniseries from the 90s. You can watch them about 3 hours and 25 minutes. It's still a fun watch. I mean, it's 30 some years old now. It's still a fun watch, and you can like both of them. It's not I don't know that there's anything that you can't enjoy the old one and the new one.
Yeah.
You can enjoy them both.
It's anything with Stephen King, really. Like, it's just such it's in our culture to the point where like, and he's the only author, at least American author I can think of, that has so many iconic characters. Like, not just you got Cujo, you got the Shining, you got Salem's Lot. I mean, Christine. Like, who would have thought a Plymouth would be so iconic?
Not me, pal.
Yeah. And I don't know, like,
and I don't mind saying I like some of Stephen King's more recent stuff. I tell you, I read one about 3 years ago called Revival. That was
actually what I'm reading now.
It's a great read. I'd love to see that one on screen.
Yeah, actually, it is actually being in the production. I found that out, but it's gonna be like another 2 or 3 years before it's actually released, I guess. But like, it did get picked up to be in a movie.
That'd be good. I thought that story was good.
Yeah, but like another thing I really enjoyed about the 2017 and the chapter 2 is I love the music, even though at times I do think the music was a little too loud in certain scenes. I love the music in this movie.
It was well scored.
Yeah. And for the second one, another thing I wanted to bring up, because like this actually wanted when they were writing the second script, there was one thing that Stephen King wanted in it, and that was the lumberjack scene.
Yeah, the Paul Bunyan.
Yeah, he wanted that to be definitely in and I will say that
cool.
actually made me jump in the theaters, because like I knew it was gonna happen, but for some reason I was just like, holy crap.
Because you're not expecting it.
Yeah.
Two of my buddies and I went to see chapter 1, and we're sitting there, and when guys go to the movies, you see guy, empty seat, guy, empty seat, guy, if you can. It's like an unwritten rule or something, fellas. And we're sitting there, and something happens, and Pennywise pops up or something. My buddy in the middle is like, oh! And he loves scary stuff. And it's all I look at him and say, you okay there, pumpkin? You need to get cleaned up? Need me to get some napkins, clean up that puddle? And he's like, shut up. I wasn't scared. I'm like, well, okay, but I didn't make a sound, I'm just saying. Meanwhile, I'm like this. I just don't make a sound.
So here is a question to both of you.
No, I'm sorry. No more questions.
Do you know? Taking no more. I'm fielding no more questions. Do you know why Stephen King wanted to put Pennywise in the sewer?
I don't remember.
I feel like I've heard this before, but now it's kind of lost me.
It's because the movie in his mind is based off of Billy Goat's Gruff, and he wanted a bridge troll, and to live underneath. So he said basically Derry is the bridge, and he lives under it, and that's why he's in the sewer.
That's pretty good, really.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm just gonna say what I think the scariest part of the movies, both movies are, and because the tension keeps building. When halfway through chapter 1, Bill goes downstairs in his house, and it's flooding. And you know that there's going to be something because the music has built and built and built. And then there's Georgie. If you'd have gone with me, I wouldn't have died. And if you'll just come with me, you'll float too. 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 On and on and on. Well, then you kind of, Bill's watching Georgie, and you see in the water there's Pennywise. And then you can't figure out what's happening. He starts to go, it's like he's working Georgie like a puppet, which it's not. Throws the kid down and goes out. It's terrifying the way it mounts and mounts and mounts. For my money, that's the scariest part of both movies.
I agree with that.
Yeah. That scene with like as he's decaying, as he's repeating, like you'll float too. That was so good to the book. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exactly how I mentioned it in the book.
Even watching it the other night, whenever I watched it, Friday or Saturday, I've seen it. I'm still like, oh gosh. Bill, go upstairs, Bill. Come on, Bill, go upstairs.
I love that whole knee-bolt scene where they're in a house and they're trying
to
that is done so well.
When Pennywise comes out of the refrigerator,
oh my
God, kind of uncurls himself and does that weird little dance. That's also terrifying.
And what's funny is that's actually the first time the kids see Pennywise when they're shooting the scene. So like like if they're scared, that's probably them really being kind of freaked
Wouldn't
out.
you be scared? I mean, look, I'm middle-aged, and if that happens here, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that you'll pick me up dead off the floor. I will have a heart attack and die. Now, I don't have any heart problems, but I will have a heart attack and die.
And
So,
it has also one of my favorite jokes is when they're upstairs and they got the 3 doors.
Scary, very scary, not scary at all.
And then he opens up the door and he's like, "Where's her legs?"
Yeah.
Where's-
The legs is in the other door.
They're running towards him, right?
Yeah. So the You'll Float 2, I think that's the most quotable thing from it's memes now, You'll Float 2. But I think it's interesting how in the first miniseries you had Pennywise say that.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that Georgie's the first one to say it in this one. I don't know that the exact lines. I believe
think you're right.
Pennywise may have said something about floating, but I don't think he said "you'll float too." I believe Georgie's the first one to say it in this reboot, and I thought that was so good that they did that. It's different, and it was more creepy when Georgie says it because it's a dead kid saying it, and also back to that scene in the first movie. You have Pennywise coming out of the water, and like you said, he's kind of controlling Georgie like a puppet. But in the second one, you're reliving that scene, and Bill is in the water.
Right.
Yep.
So I thought this is good cinema.
Right.
Like this is good. This is art.
Oh, yeah. And listen, the movies are well done.
Yeah.
I'm always like the second part's just not as strong.
Right.
Oh yeah. And with Beverly's character, like she pretty much marries the person.
She marries her dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's I mean
Sadly, that happens.
Sadly, that happens, and I feel like it may be more of a stereotype now of kids, girl kids who are abused end up marrying that type of thing.
Yep.
But it does happen. So I think that's the only point they were really making, and that's again one of the downfalls of the second movie. You didn't get to explore any of that where you did in the first. In the first, you got to see a lot of her dad abusing her scenes,
and it's missed. Her husband comes after her in the original story. He goes to Derry, and the clown kills him.
Mm-hmm. I want to see that. I would be rooting for Pennywise.
Bill's wife follows him to Derry, and the clown takes her, but doesn't kill her. And when the Pennywise, whatever, I know it's not really a clown. When they kill him, she comes down and she's catatonic. And she comes back at the end of the book, something with the bike. They go riding on the bike, and he brings her back.
He puts her on the front of the bike, and they go down like one of the roads that's and it's like, let's go as fast as I can to see if I can wake her up.
Both of those could have, of all the stuff they cut, those two subplots would have been 10 minutes. It would have been you. And again, that's a nitpicking, but we pick nits here on the podcast.
We do pick nits.
I listen to a podcast that they pick nits of the movies every week, and I'm like, I'm stealing that.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting. I'm sure this wasn't exactly planned, but maybe when they decided, you know what, we need to do a reboot of this thing, it just fell in line with the time frame. But it was exactly 27 years. Oh,
right.
That's amazing that the time frame fell that way. And I'm sure that when they were coming up with the script and everything, they're like, we actually need to wait to 2017 to release this thing.
In 2044, we'll probably see another remake.
We probably will. If we're alive.
Jeez, Justin. If we make it.
If we make it that long.
Sleep well.
Tonight,
if you wake up tomorrow, call me.
That's right. All right, good stuff.
Maybe writing greeting cards is not for you, buddy.
Yeah.
Gee. I'm still alive.
I'm going to write some fortune cookies.
Man, I will be in my 70s in the 40s. I don't want to talk about it.
There you go.
That can't be right. Yeah, I will turn 70 in 2048. Anyway.
All righty. Well, we've talked a lot about it. We could go probably for 3 or 4 more hours, but we should probably not do that.
Josh and I are going to fight. We're not even mad. We just want to fight.
We'll have a supercut of the podcast
later.
Yes. All right. So next week, we are going to be tackling Beetlejuice. And Beetlejuice is a movie that I have not seen since the 90s. It's not one that I watch regularly. I know that I liked it back then, so I am very anxious to see if it's aged well, and anxious to see, you know, if I still am a huge fan, like, and I used to be back then. But I mean, the cast is spot on in Beetlejuice. I know that much. So I am anxious to dive back into that one.
It used to be one of my favorites. I haven't seen it for a really long time.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to actually watch it.
I bet it holds up too.
I bet it does.
It's not relying on pop culture, I don't believe.
No, I don't think. But I would argue that this is probably something we should talk about next week. But I would argue that Beetlejuice is a big part of pop culture. Everybody knows Beetlejuice. Everybody knows Beetlejuice. They even do plays of Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
You know, so
You can't say it 3 times, so
you cannot. All right, good stuff.
Beetlejuice. I got to find a way to watch it. I'm sure it's streaming somewhere.
I'm sure it is. All right. So, closing quote. I went through all the movie quotes, and I'm like, I am not satisfied with any of these. So,
Can you just not use a multitude of 4-letter words like those kids did?
could do that. Or I could just take a snippet from Stephen King's book, and that's what I did. That's what I did. So, this is Stephen King from the It novel. The energy you drew on so extravagantly when you were a kid. The energy you thought you would never exhaust. That slipped away somewhere between 18 and 24. To be replaced by something much duller. Something as bogus as a Coke high. Purpose, maybe. Goals. Whatever rah-rah junior chamber of commerce word you want to use. It was no big deal. It didn't all go at once, with a bang. And maybe Richie thought, that's the scary part. How you didn't stop being a kid all at once, with an explosive bang. Like one of the clown trick balloons. The kid in you just leaks out, like air from a tire.
And that would sum up that whole series and book so well, because that is like, it's also a coming of age story as well, and that's a good quote right there.
Well, I think it sums up adulthood in general. I mean, and maybe the point of our podcast is to continue reliving childhood, part of it anyway. That's pop culture, but it's because adulthood comes like that. It's not a bang. It just your childhood leaks out.
Yep.
And I think we all crave it. You know, we crave to experience those things again. And that's why horror, it is such a good avenue, such a good media outlet. You get to relive childhood through these things.
Agreed.
Because like this had the perfect timing, because like nostalgia was also big. So to have the 80s nostalgia mixed in with it kind of, was a good thing for it.
Exactly. All right. See you next week. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. We hope that we were able to entertain you, at least for a spell. If you see value in our craziness and want to continue supporting us, please follow us on social media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our videos, and share our content with someone you may know. Also, let us know how we're doing. Make suggestions for the podcast. Leave us a comment. Heck, send us an email. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time on the Bottle of Pop Culture podcast.
Hello, Joshy. Get that boat fixed yet?
Not really. The stupid thing still sinks. What on earth am I doing wrong?
Oh, cheer up, Joshy. I'm sure you'll get it figured out. And when you do, we can play.
Are you like Joshy and fed up that your sinking boats keep you from playing with your favorite friendly clown? If so, we here at Row 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 Your Boat Corporation have the perfect solution for you, called You'll Float Too. Our scientists here at Row 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 Your Boat have dedicated a good 20 minutes of their life researching this chemical-based wax solution to coat your paper boats. Once coated, Your boat will be floating down the street and into the sewer drains in no time.
Hey, can I get some of that?
Of course you can. It only costs $49.99 per container plus $10 shipping.
Good Lord, that's expensive. You're literally right there. Could you give me the product? I mean, at least give me some discount for the shipping?
Absolutely. But we will need to charge a $10 handling fee.
So, it's still $60 then.
False. It's $59.99.
Well, this is just highway robbery. I'm not paying for that.
So the next time your younger brother asks you to make a paper boat, you'll have the peace of mind knowing that he'll float too, and you'll float too.
You'll float too. You'll float too. You'll float too.
Except Joshy. He's too cheap to float.